Right, another bike going out today, if you can see it through the blue smoke. This lovely little RD400, beautiful tidy bike. Just running in still, so keeping the revs low and just setting it up. It didn't always sound like that though. When it came into us, the owner was able to ride it, but he'd been out for a couple of rides, and occasionally, on fast runs, it had just sort of slightly nipped up and he'd whipped the clutch in. And it had done it twice, so he was worried it would do it again, so he brought it in to have it checked out. The engine had been rebuilt, lots and lots of work had been done to it, so we weren't really sure where we'd be looking. Left-hand cylinder had seized, that was fairly clear when we took it apart. When we got the carbs apart, so we're looking for things like air leaks and weak mixtures or ignition timing to be wrong. It's got an electronic ignition system on it, a vape electronic, so we're not looking at points or anything like that. And we checked it and it seemed to be timed up pretty much right. But we took these apart. Sorry, that's I sprained my wrist, my thumb, which is why it's all bandaged up. So we took these apart, and when we emptied them out onto the bench, lots and lots of sand came out. The bodies have been vapor blasted, and the sand media from the vapor blasting was still in there. That had carried on into the engine as the bike's been running, and it had started to do some damage inside. The crank bearings were rough, the bores were scored, and we think that that's basically what had encouraged the seizure on the left hand side. Everything else on the bike checked out okay: oil pump delivery, carburetor settings, air leaks, things like that. There's nothing there. So when we realised the crank was as rough as it was and the main bearings were gone, the centre main bearings were affected as well, that had to go off to Grampians to be rebuilt, which is a shame because it had only just been rebuilt. But there was no avoiding that. The scored bores and the damage to the cylinders, we got new pistons, went one oversize, and Mick Abbey bored that out for us. Got a little Robin hanging around in the background. Got the engine back together, and it does run again beautifully now. We've changed a couple of settings just to alter the way it runs very slightly. It was hunting pretty badly, so we've rebuilt the carbs at a different setting to where they were. Runs smoothly on the road, just like an RD400 should. Starts and runs nicely. It's still going to be running in now for 200 or 300 miles. I'd like to dyno test it when we're done, but I want some road miles on it first, and I want the owner to run it in for us on road. I know you can obviously run a bike in on the dyno and then start giving it full throttle and seeing where the mixture is, but with a completely rebuilt engine, I'd rather it was running really carefully and gently for a few hundred miles and then come back to us for half a day, and it can just go on the rollers for an hour or so and just be checked. I don't think we're going to find anything wrong, but I'd rather make sure. And that's about it. So owner's coming in for this today. We found while we were working on that, the back brake was seized, and when you rode it, the back brake would get hot, even though when you span the wheel freely at cold, it would spin nicely. It didn't feel like there was any friction. The pistons in this brake caliper were a little bit sticky, so Oscar had that apart, but it was still sticking, and I was fairly sure what it would be. Inside the brake piston here, there are two little holes where this pipe comes in from the side. There's two little holes in here, one at the top, one at the bottom. The one at the bottom, obviously any silt that comes out, and this orange hose here is your supply hose for brake fluid from the reservoir up here. So the fluid's always coming down this hose. Any debris, silt or muck that gathers will sit at this lower point here in the elbow, where there is also a tiny little pinprick hole. It's only about 0.5 mil, maybe 0.7 of a mil in diameter, and it just blocks up. It's the return hole for the fluid. So when you pump the brake, you pump fluid into the system and the pressure can't get back out again because the hole's blocked. So that actually seizes your brake on while you're riding. Done quite a few of them. It's a straightforward enough job to sort out. So front brake was done. Front brake was binding a little bit, so we sort of serviced that. Back brake was binding, we fixed and cleaned that. And that is it. It's ready to go to its owner today. I say he'll do the running in the miles and he'll bring it back to us at some point. Winter's coming on, so we might not see this again for a few more months now, but the aim is to get about 200 to 300 miles on it. It's careful, steady riding, and then check it before we start giving it any revs and power, just to make sure he's got over this seizure problem. The electronic ignitions that you fit, you can static time them okay, everything can seem fine, but you can't say for certain what's happening when they get up to 6,000 or 7,000 RPM without basically having it on the dyno, getting it up to that RPM and then shining a strobe on it as you're doing it to make sure that the ignition timing isn't wandering at all. So we want to do all that at some other point, but we want the engine to be nicely running, nice and slack before we do that. So I'm sure we'll see it again sometime soon, which will be nice because it's a lovely bike.